of Romania's greatest poker players have gathered here today for the chance to get to the final table. Now, Heat 2 is about to get underway with a further 18 players vying for one of those 6 seats.
Heat 2 began where Heat 1 left off, fast and furious, as players gunned for one of the 6 tickets to the semi-finals. And it was now time for Cristian Dragomir, perhaps the most well-known poker player from Romania, to take his seat at the tables. But like his fellow team member before him, he was left on the sidelines, unable to find a playable starting hand. After an uneasy start, 21-year-old Mihai Radu found himself short-stacked and looking at a low flop of 8-6-5. Aware of his opponent's chip stack, he bet out and was instantly called. The turn brought a 10, and after a careful glance from his challenger, Mihai bet out again and immediately faced a check raise all-in. The young Romanian couldn't have called fast enough and turned over his pocket 8s for a set. A jack on the turn was no help to the pair of 10s, and Radu was back on track. Over on table 2, Claudio Dimitrescu began to quietly exert his dominance over his opposition by taking advantage of several low boards. His ability to put players under pressure by firing the decisive second bullet became a fundamental part of his game. Back over on table 1, Mihai Radu found himself in yet another pot, this time with Iulian Accenti. Aces versus queens. Both players moved all in and their fate was now left in the hands of the dealer. No ladies on the board meant an early exit for Iulian and another double up to the now prosperous stack of the young Romanian.
A little angry maybe. Had 2 queens, run into 2 aces. No.
It is a common perception that you do not necessarily need good cards in order to win a poker hand. You simply need to be able to outplay your opponent. Here we find a bet followed by 3 callers. The flop comes 9-5-4. The blinds check and the original bettor bets out again, hoping to take down the pot. But Claudio Dimitrescu refused to believe he has a good hand and raises. Seat 3 knows that Claudio is an aggressive player and may once again be taking advantage of the low board, and so re-raises. Claudio carefully considers his options and decides to come over the top and move all in. The frustrated opponent can now no longer make the call, forced to fold, and watch as Claudio turns over his queen jack. A stone-cold bluff wins the hand. Back over on table 2, players began to mimic their poker heroes in a hope it would bring them better fortunes. As the blinds reached their 3rd level, the action began to slow down, the early casualties becoming a warning to the pitfalls of poker. One mistake, one wrong bluff, or simple twitch of the hand and your tournament life could be over. The fear of not making it through could be seen across many of the players' faces, something only a few managed to capitalise on.
It's time now to take a break from the tables as we find out what Romania has to offer as we go out and about in Bucharest. Situated in the southeast of the country, Bucharest became Romania's capital city in 1862 and has since cemented its position as the country's industrial and cultural centre. This beautiful city is affectionately known as Little Paris.
During World War I, Romania was occupied by German forces and by June 1941 became a member of the Axis of Power alongside the Nazi regime, a result which caused them to suffer heavy losses at the hands of the Allied bombers. In 1965, the country was to fall under the rule of Nicolae Ceausescu, leader of the Romanian Communist Party, who immediately set out to transform the city. Historical parts were destroyed and replaced by grey, uniformed, communist-style buildings.
Historically, this square is one of the most important places in Romania. That's because 18 years ago, this is where the country gained their freedom from communism.
In 1989, and after 24 years in control, the people had had enough, and a week-long series of riots culminated in the overthrow of the communist regime and execution of its leader. After fierce fighting and heavy losses, the revolutionaries celebrated throughout the streets as Romania entered an era of new hope. The coming years would bring with it a series of political reforms, slowly developing Romania into the country that it is today.
Right, behind me, somewhere there in the fog, is the Parliament Palace. Now, this is the 2nd largest building in the world, other than the Pentagon. It used to be called the People's Palace, and it's got 12 stories. It has 31,000 rooms, and it covers 330,000 square feet. It's also rumoured to have 12 stories underground.
With a population of over 2 million, it is the largest city in Romania and 7th largest in the European Union. Its historical past is echoed throughout the city in its diverse mix of communist era and modern-day architecture. With 169 potential starting hands in Texas Hold'em, it can sometimes be a bit complicated to know which cards to hold and which cards to fold. So here's a quick guide to what I like to call the good, the bad and the ugly. One of the first things you must learn when playing poker is which starting hands to hold and which ones to fold. The answer will vary depending on the type of poker game you're playing, the number of people still in the hand, as well as your position at the table. However, here is a general guide to remember when taking your seat. With so many potential starting hands in poker, it may be a while before you come across a pair that you like. Here are the premium hole cards, the cards that everybody wants to look down at. When you have top pairs or top connectors, it is advisable to raise pre-flop, so that those players with marginal hands or low pairs don't outflop you and make you pay. Even with a pair of aces, you do not want to have more than 2 opponents after the flop. If you have pocket jacks or pocket tens and there is a huge amount of action pre-flop, there is a good chance someone else has got a higher pair than you, so don't be afraid to fold them. These are playable hands, but you must use caution when deciding to use them. With very small pairs, you are really looking to either flop a set or simply fold. Suited connectors are also very playable. The closer your cards are in rank, the better your chances you have of hitting a straight. And likewise, if your hands are suited, the more likely you are to hit a flush. The idea of a good poker hand is that the whole card should work together. With the above, you have no possible means of a straight and an unlikely flush draw. You might think that ace-6 is a playable hand, but more often than not, you will run into someone with a better kicker and end up paying him off.
Ability, courage, determination and fortune are just some of the qualities needed to win any poker tournament. Let's get back to the table and see who's going to make the most of their chip stack.
Now, here's another poker lesson. If you are under the gun and your bet is followed by a raise and an all-in, you can be pretty confident that your cards are beaten. Even if you are holding a pair of queens, there is a chance that one of the other players may be holding an overpair. Paul Mattei correctly deduced this and made a painful fold. Unfortunately, the player to his left did not and eventually called. The community cards only prolonged his misery as his pocket jacks proved to be no match for Claudius's pair of aces. As it turns out, the ladies would have won with the flush, but Paul should take consolation in the fact that he made the right call. The beauty about poker is that it is a game of many twists and turns where fortunes can change on the turn of a card. Hitting top pair does not guarantee success. You still have to survive the notorious river, where made hands are crippled and dreams are broken as the dealer reveals the final lifeline. Even moving all in and getting your opponent to call with an inferior hand will not always bring you fortunes. As the blinds increased, so did the gap between the players' stacks. People were forced to play cards they would normally muck, and in doing so, the casualty list started to grow. It wasn't long before the tournament favourite ran into trouble. After being left card dead for the majority of the tournament, Christian Dragomir pushed all in with a lone ace, only to be called by 10-jack from the now chip leader Mihai Radu. A single 10 on the flop was enough to bring an end to his tournament.
Yeah, a little disappointed because I couldn't play a hand. I played nothing, just fold till the ace-3. It's my best card tonight. I think the chip leader will win the tournament because he's very aggressive and the cards were with him today, and I think he will win.
With only 4 players remaining at the table and with the blinds now so high, no one would blame anyone for pushing all in with pocket tens. An instant call from your opponent is a heartbreaking sight, especially when they reveal an overpair. The board came close, but a third 10 could not be found and the remaining players celebrated reaching the semi-finals. All attention was now on table 2, where 3 sets of eyes were carefully eyeing the short stack. Ultimately, the inevitable happened, and after continuously bleeding chips hand after hand, the short stack called Claudius's all-in with only a high card ace. The jacks held up and the remaining victors from Heat 2 celebrated their day's work. This heat was dominated by two players. Claudio Dimitrescu and Mihai Radu's eye for exploiting opponents' weaknesses meant that they finished on top, with 9,600 and 13,125 chips respectively. Both players have shone through as ones to watch out for in the future.
So that's it for part 2, but join us after the break when we're going to be finding out which 6 remaining players will make it through to the semi-finals. We'll also be taking a look at some of the all-important strategies in poker. See you after break.